Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. And we have a new whiskey that's kind of interesting. Steven, talk about this.
Yeah, so this is the Knob Creek Cask Strength Rye Whiskey. It comes in at 119.6 proof, which means the ABV is 59.8%. So it
ain't no fucking around with this stuff.
Yeah, it's strong.
It is strong. And you know what? I wouldn't if you told me this was an 80 proof whiskey, I'd have believed you. Not based on flavor, based on the fact that it is not. There's no burn at all.
No, there's no burn, but it's
wonderful.
There's a little bit of alcohol taste in it, but it's not a burn. It's woodsy, yet like you get the vanilla, you get the cherry. There's even a little spice to it, and it's just a good blend. This Knob Creek is actually barreled specifically for the state of Ohio, so you wouldn't be able to buy this in Kentucky or any other state.
Take that, Kentucky.
Yeah, so and now barrel picks are not uncommon in other places. Like you can do barrel picks in Michigan, you can do them in PA, and I want to say, and obviously you can do them in Kentucky. But there's other places where you can do them, and they're really huge in Michigan. I got a good friend that lives up there, and he's gotten me a couple barrel picked, whether it was Clyde Mays or Woodford Reserves that were really good. And the barrel pick means that in the case of Ohio, the state, the different liquor agencies got together and said, we feel our flavor profile should be X. And so, give us an age, make us a specific barrel that'll age for X amount of time, 3 years, 6 years, whatever it might be, and then that will be ours specifically. And so the way the state of Ohio works, and we talked about it when we had Ben on, is the state liquor agency or the state liquor control, they own the whiskey, right? So they went in and then they got this specific whiskey, and it, however many barrels of it, and then they bottled it and then dispersed it throughout the state, specifically the state of Ohio. And it didn't go to every store in Ohio. It only went to certain stores. And one of the stores that I go to, they got a number of them. I think they got like 15 bottles, and the owner called me and said that they had it. And so I went and picked it up, and here we are.
Well, thank you. I'm scoring it on 94.
Yeah, I'll give it, that's, it's funny. I'm the same way. It's so smooth. The flavor is really bold, and I think the flavors are distinct in this one between the wood, the vanilla, the fruit, the spice, all of it. I mean, and they all hit at different points on your tongue. Just really good.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't give 94s out lightly.
Nope.
And this is a fantastic whiskey. And again,
I mean, it's a rye, but it's not over the top with the rye taste, if you know what I mean.
I do.
And I think
right, it's got the more distinct or more diverse flavors like you'd expect from a multi-grain whiskey, like a bourbon. I mean, again, I'm not shitting on rye. I like rye a lot, and I've become much more of a fan lately. But this is fantastic.
Right. I mean, I think the other thing, the other flavor, there's a little bit of maple in there as well. And I know you don't
pick up on that. No, I don't.
On the back end, it's back there a little bit, but it's so slight, and it's just kind of the perfect finisher to the whole thing.
All right, I'm looking for it now, and I'm kind of feeling it. It's
really good.
We're drinking out of the fancy Glencairn glasses too, so
this one does go home with me, by the way.
I understand. You bought it. That's fine. Unlike the one that was lost for the show, this is your whiskey.
When the liquor store owner calls you and says, "Hey, come and get one of these," then,
that is yours. And thank you for sharing it, sir.
Yes.
All right. So we have more whiskey to talk about because our Twitter account had some whiskey interactions, and I didn't know about this until you told me today. So I'm going to, again, throw this to you.
Well, it's funny. So Fred Minnick, he is an author and a host of a show called Bourbon Up. And he wrote the book Bourbon, Rum, Curious, and Bourbon, Rum, Curious, and Mead. And he's also the editor-in-chief of a site called Bourbon Plus. But anyway, a couple days ago, he put out a tweet that said, every now and then you see a bottle that is just breathtaking, and then I crack it open, and inside it's like licking a fence post. Now, as soon as I read this tweet, I said, oh, I can relate to that. Let me tell you what my partner did. And I didn't get too specifics on who bought the bottle
me the dick
or why.
too hard.
But I replied to him and I said, in the case of the Lusty Claw, it should be a felony. Really cool bottle. The liquid inside was paint thinner with a splash of hot asshole. That's how I described it. And he said, this is a poster child of exactly what I'm talking about. Top 5 cool bottle, top 5 crappiest whiskeys ever.
All right, so Fred Minnick is his name?
Fred Minnick, yes.
Fred Minnick, okay.
And I've followed him for a while, even before.
I want to say this. I don't think I can say this enough. Lusty Claw, I admit, not good.
And that's not your fault. I mean,
that's all I wanted on the record.
It's not your fault. I mean, it's whiskey, and the one thing people always say, "Oh, that looks good." It all looks good, except that shit you got from fucking Florida that one time.
That was given to me by a psycho girl I dated, and that's not my fault.
No, it's not your fault. But that one didn't look good.
It's my fault for dating her. She's nuts.
Yes. That one didn't look good from the get-go.
True.
And it never, it didn't let you down.
It delivered what you would expect, yes.
Right. This, on the other hand, I mean, it just really is an amazing, cool bottle. You can go on our Twitter account, check it out, and probably find it on our IG as well from when we initially drank it.
Yeah, and when I bought it, I was in New Jersey, and I'm like, there was a sign that said we only have 2 bottles of this left. I was out on my lunch break when I bought it. I didn't have time. We've gone through that story enough times. Yes. But the fact that you and Fred Minnick got to interact over the awfulness of Lusty Claw is actually hilarious.
And I'm also I'm still upset with you that you drank it. Like, that was so bad, it was worth.
Why are you upset with me? I took a bullet. I literally, Clint Eastwood in The Line of Fire, I'll deal with this. I wore the vest, but I took the bullet.
I would have poured that shit right down my drain.
Which is, by the way, what Bourbon.com recommended.
Yeah.
Anyway. They literally said pour it down the drain and keep the cool bottle. Which I poured it down my throat and kept the cool bottle.
Which might as well be a drain. Okay.
That was not nice, but okay.
So, this week, we had the Mueller testimony.
Yes.
Dum, dum, dum. And this was supposed to be a defining moment in Trump's presidency. There was so much hype built by, really the left and Democrats that this was going to be the nail in the coffin, sort of moment that would, lead directly to impeachment. And, the right and Republicans and conservatives and Trump supporters in general, they tried to spin it every direction they could, right? Like,
I agree.
Mueller had it out for Trump. He didn't follow the law. It's all a witch hunt. Just all the stories that they were using to spin it. I came out and I put on Facebook, like,
you preemptively said this, by the
way. Right, I preemptively said, and I probably should have put it on our Facebook page, but this
put it on our Twitter, though. You said it.
But this testimony was, all it was going to be was, you were going to find out that, yes, the Russians absolutely fucked with our elections. And did Trump and his crew, did they knowingly cooperate and conspire, right? Because it's about conspiracy. The whole collusion thing didn't matter. We knew Republicans were going to continue to use the word collusion and get Mueller to say, no, there was no collusion. But ultimately what that report told us and what this testimony told us was that the Russians absolutely tried to hack into our elections.
Sure.
The Trump administration wasn't upset that things were being tilted in their favor, but they didn't knowingly go out and try to work with the Russians. Now, my caveat to that was, he did say Manafort took polling data and gave it to a Russian oligarch who had ties to Putin and ties to the Russian government. And that's the one thing that you can, that makes me raise an eyebrow, like, I feel like I could make at least a relatively decent connection to the idea of conspiracy through Paul Manafort. But he
and you're saying that from the perspective of if you were a legal prosecutor.
Right. If I'm a prosecutor, I feel like you probably could have gone down that road, but maybe there was a good reason why they didn't. And maybe tying the whole group to what Paul Manafort did might have been tough. But I think that someone could have been pulled into that somehow.
All right.
And I'm not a federal prosecutor, so I mean, there's that caveat to this as well.
But you play one on the radio, so that's good.
Yes, there you go. And I thought the other part that was going to come out was that there were plenty of moments that could be categorized as obstruction, but ultimately Mueller decided to say that he had to follow, the White House.
The established precedent that you cannot.
Precedent that you can't indict.
The DOJ cannot indict a president or
now,
prosecute a president.
So the funny thing is that this is just a guideline, and this is something that kind of burned in my craw. Like, it's not a precedent because it hasn't come up before. The other aspect of it is that this is a guideline, that's put out by the OLC, and so it's never been challenged in court, not the Supreme Court, and so we actually don't know. Like, this is everyone's interpretation, but there's an easy way to get that interpretation, and it's push it all the way to the Supreme Court. And this is a high enough issue that you're not going to go through, district and appellate court. This is something that would go directly to the Supreme Court. So the idea that he couldn't, because of this OLC guideline, I think that he hid behind that for a reason.
OLC is Office of Legal Counsel?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And I think he did that for a reason because he honestly felt that if he didn't want this to become political, and he said, if you guys want, I'm going to tell you this is what we have. I think there's room for me. I think that he could charge him with obstruction, but because he's a sitting president, we've never done it before. I'm not going to be the one to do it. The only one who has the power to do it is Congress, so that responsibility is on you to figure out how to get there. All I'm telling you is that this is what I see.
I think you're 100% right on that. I think he definitely, a lot of the folks on the left claim he deflected responsibility. I know that
you call it whatever you want to do.
Right.
He did the right thing.
I agree completely.
His role was to investigate and come back and say report. Now, the one mistake I think he did make where he said I can't exonerate him. Right? I mean, and that would never in no circumstance is that any sort of precedent anywhere that a prosecutor comes in and says I can't exonerate. Right, I can't. That's not it's either he's guilty or he's not. And if you don't have, and I get what and the reason why he's saying it is because he believes that there's evidence of obstruction. Right. But he also, so because he has that information, he's not willing to say that Donald Trump didn't obstruct justice, Donald Trump didn't try to obstruct justice, or that he was free and clear and innocent of obstructing. He couldn't say any of those things, so he threw in the caveat that he couldn't exonerate him. And that's problematic because legally there's just no standard for that whatsoever anywhere in our legal system.
It's funny you say that because I listened to about an hour of testimony, and I listened to it live. And it was really just brutal to listen to because every Democrat that got up on there said, you're one of the greatest patriots in the history of the world.
Well, they all said that. Republicans said it too.
Okay. So I don't even know who it was who said, you use the word exonerate. There is no office of exoneration. Exonerate. No prosecutor ever exonerates anyone, and that's true.
It's true.
It was annoying.
You're either guilty or innocent.
But prosecutors in all kinds of cases will try to prove guilt.
Yes.
Because it's their job. It's their job. I get it.
That's their job. But listen. Even think about this. If anyone could have said, "Listen, yeah, he was found innocent, but I'm not going to exonerate him," it would have been the prosecutor with OJ, right? Either Clark or
Darden
or Darden, right? Listen, yeah, he's innocent, but I am not going to say he's exonerated, right?
Anytime you want to talk about OJ, I'm there.
You get what I'm saying? But they can't say that, right? His peers found him innocent. Period.
Right.
So in this particular instance, everyone's saying either he did it or he didn't, and you're trying to put us in this gray area of exoneration. What are you doing? And again, that was his signal to Congress. Look, I have it, but it's not my job I have the evidence to show that he did it. It's not my job to actually, move this forward.
To clear him, right?
Right. It's your responsibility, Congress, and that's what he did. So now the problem is, I think what he wanted to do was really clear, and he did it, right? And he never came out and said it's your job, but you could tell by the way he was answering questions that that's how he felt. Now, a lot of people say this was a mitigated disaster for the left. I don't believe it was, and the reason why they're saying that is that Mueller really came off. He didn't present well for whatever reason, it seemed like he had to ask almost every person that asked him a question to repeat the question multiple times. And I don't know if it was because he couldn't hear based on the way the room was set up or whatever. But, I mean, that's what made the thing drag out so long. I mean, it would have been 4 hours instead of 8 if he didn't have to have every single person that asked him a question repeat themselves.
Which I found really weird, because you and I can do better than that from a sound standpoint in the Whiskey Congress studio. This is fucking Congress.
Yeah, but it's a much bigger
area,
and it's a weird
Steve
setup.
Also
I agree. Their budget's a little bigger.
And yeah, a little bit.
But
the $500 we got wrapped up in this shit, the Congress should be able to beat that based on the recently approved budget, which we could talk about, but let's skip that.
Right. Although the interesting about that is that if this actually goes through, we won't have this conversation again about raising the debt ceiling again
for 2 years.
For 2 years. So
which
is the
is
first
good
time
and bad.
I don't know how
good
long.
and bad because
we need to. Okay, but anyway, let's not get off that.
Okay.
So with the Mueller testimony, I think people were saying it was a mitigated disaster, right?
Right.
For the left, like Robert Mueller presented bad. He was stuttering over questions. He had to have the questions repeated. His deputy was kind of guiding him along, and a lot of people are coming out, and I felt this way as well, that Mueller was more of an advisory figure in this whole thing, and his deputies, like, they did most of the grunt work, which makes sense, right? Like, he's one person. Like, he's not going to be all over the place. He was probably there to interview some really key, important witnesses, but then he probably had to go through everything else as it was coming in and try to start to put it together, so he wasn't as in tune with the details as you would maybe think that he was.
Or hope. Because realistically, he was the headpiece of a huge investigation.
Right.
And the idea that he would be in every room for every investigation
and
is
know
silly.
Everything by heart. I mean, yeah, and so that's the part that I don't think the Democrats really thought about and processed. Everyone just assumed that he knew every single specific detail. So when they got up there, and everyone was just assuming. And part of that is because of Robert Mueller's record, how long he's been serving, from his career in Vietnam all the way up to FBI director. That
FBI director for 12 years,
yes,
through
longest
a lot
FBI
of shit,
director ever.
including 9/11 and the Boston bombing. I mean,
yes, and so I think everyone just assumed that he was going to know everything about this case and be able to rattle off every single detail, just like it was a footnote in his brain. And when he wasn't able to do that, I think there was such a buildup about who Robert Mueller is and was and everything he's done that I think, created this monolithic figure in our head, me included. And so when he got up there and you realize, like, oh, he's actually got to reference the report and read it to, like, really remember what's in there. And you think about it, the report itself is over 438 pages.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, so there's a lot to kind of process there. So people made it seem like, oh, well, he's old and he didn't have as much to do with this as we all thought. No, it's not that. He was a figurehead. But again, it's a 500-page report. He doesn't know every single detail. Right. I mean,
do you recall page 62 and
there's no one
when it talked about you scratching your nuts? No.
Right. I mean, and the thing is, there's no one who knows that report really the way that anyone, I think, we were imagining Robert Mueller actually knew it, right? And the people, whether they were Republican or Democratic or Democrats, in terms of the people who were questioning him, they had a bunch of people kind of figure out, like, all right, what's the most important things you should focus on? And then they said, okay, ask him that you have 5 minutes, so you have to ask him this one thing and focus on that. It's on this page in this section and go. Right? So they know this one or two things that they want to ask him, and he's got 500 pages to try to sift through to get to where they're at.
Right.
Right? I mean, I think so. Where it was bad for the Democrats is, like, listen, Robert Mueller told you, back when he had that press conference, that he wasn't going to talk outside of that report. Right? You should have just left it alone. This didn't give you any more than what you already had. And so what are we doing? But you know what the Democrats are doing? They're saying, screw it. We're going full steam ahead with an investigation, and we're going to go after it. Now, I know I said that I believe that Mueller says, listen, I think there's enough for obstruction here. And I shouldn't say that he thinks you can get a conviction on it, but I think he was saying more should be investigated. And I think, my opinion, Congress should have ignored that suggestion and put this to bed and just stop with this whole idea of impeachment?
Well, I found this interesting because I only watched about, I would say, an hour of total testimony. I watched or listened to. I was at home or driving around. And again, I found it very, very partisan. It was like a Democrat,
on both sides?
Partisan on both sides. Democrats were kissing Robert Mueller's ass, which is kind of funny. And Republicans were chastising the whole process to very heavy degrees. And I'll throw some respect your way. You said, let me save you the trouble. Here's what's going to happen. And what you said basically is what happened. It was a lot of partisan hackery. Nothing really came of it. Ultimately, Trump claimed that he was exonerated. Clearly, that's not the case. Mueller threw this into Congress.
Well, I mean, I can make the argument that, you know what, from a legal standard, that is the case.
No. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Because, I mean, it's what Mueller didn't do, right? And whether he's passing the buck to Congress or not, he didn't do it. So what Mueller didn't do was say that this guy committed obstruction.
True, but he did say that if Trump was no longer president, he could be prosecuted. So
well,
I do think there is.
He did say that, but he didn't necessarily say.
He didn't say he would.
He didn't
was just
say
saying basically
he would.
He couldn't, as things stand, as a DOJ representative.
Right, and I think you can even make the argument that he was saying, if Trump were like, can you charge Trump with a crime right now? No. But once he's out, I can charge him with a crime. But I don't think he specifically said, once he's out, he should be charged with obstruction.
You're correct.
Right?
You're correct.
So,
no, he was answering a procedural question, not a practical question.
And because, and that's critical because you're saying, Trump didn't exonerate him, and I'm saying, listen,
Mueller didn't exonerate
him. And what I'm saying is that, listen, he wasn't found guilty. No one came out and said he did do this. They said we didn't find evidence that he didn't, or however they want to say it. And I think just from a legal standpoint, Trump is being very technical here, and him and his team are smart to push this idea that, listen, if you're not going to say that I did it, and it's a legal proceeding, there's no in between. Right? You're a one-man show. There's no jury. You can't have a hung judge, right? Or a hung prosecutor. Okay, I guess you could if they got a big dick, but...
Really? Really?
But the whole point...
Really? Give me the fucking whiskey bottle. If we're going to do this, I need more whiskey. Give me the whiskey bottle.
You still got whiskey in yours.
I do a little bit. All right.
But... I'm a child. But...
No, you have a child who would be more mature than what you just did.
Fair. But I still stand behind the fact that he didn't say that he committed the crime. And so since he said that he didn't commit the crime, based off of the way our legal standards are, you can't... Trump is right to say no collusion, no obstruction.
No obstruction.
Right?
I don't know why it sounds like
it's
that, but...
So, so Trump's technically right, and this is where Democrats lose all the time because he carves out these little niches where you have to pay attention to the details and the minutia, and you can't get so caught up on emotions and feelings and optics, right? You have to listen to what he's saying, right? And Mike Wood got us on this a long time ago, where Trump said, it was the most watched inauguration ever. Well, and you're just like, bullshit, the ratings are down, blah, blah, blah. But because people were able to stream it and watch it on YouTube and Yahoo, then yes, technically it was. We're going by TV ratings. He's going by TV ratings and, the number of views it got on social media and YouTube, right? And that's where Trump and his team have been doing that since day one. Right? They've been doing that, and that's what they're doing here. They're saying, technically, he didn't say.
I would call that tap dancing, but okay.
Okay, you could call it whatever you want, but it's still legit. And the thing is that because they're not wrong, right? And then they can just sit up there and say, listen, we're not wrong, and these guys are wrong, and they're acting insane about it.
The whole media fake news thing, things like that give momentum or energy to the media fake news thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you say things that are...
But the whole point of the fake news thing is to get out ahead of bad press. So the reason why they said, so the fake news thing is twofold, right? And I always go to CNN because they've been the ones who've been caught the most like not only lying, but lying, fabricating stories, not checking sources that come out to be completely false. It's happened on more, like I can think of 5 specific occasions where CNN had to do a retraction to the point where people had to get fired for the bullshit that they put out against Trump. Right, like so. CNN does that. He says fake news.
I've agreed with you on CNN.
Right.
Hack organization.
But they did it early enough where Trump said, "Look, see, fake, lies, bullshit." Right. So any sort of negative criticism, he says fake news. Now he says it so often that his supporters, it's in their head. Right. Like so, when he says it, it's like Pavlov's dog. Right. Like I mean, like he rings the bell and they just fake news, fake news. That means it can't be true. And then what happens is, now you can't criticize the guy because anyone who supports him, they hear something against him, they say it's what? It's fake news.
True.
Right? I mean, so that's where you want to talk about the whole stable genius sort of thing. Yeah. Does he know he's doing it? I don't know, but he's doing it, and he's been doing shit like that consistently since, early 2015.
And we will be talking about that for a long time, I'm sure. In the current state of things, though, Attorney General Barr removed the restriction on the federal death penalty for the first time in, 17 years? Something like that?
Yeah, 16, 17 years. 2003 was when they stopped being. The reason why they did it is that it was just there was just such a huge imbalance with the number of, black, violent felons that were getting the death penalty compared to any other race, that they just said, like, this is just being so disproportionately administered, it's literally unconstitutional.
All right.
So they stopped it. And, Trump supporters say, we're not racist. And it's just like, all right, well, this thing was stopped because it was inherently racist. And now the same administration that you're saying isn't racist is doing something that we know is inherently racist, and it's about to start peeling off black people. Now, listen, it all depends on how you feel about the death penalty, right? Like, some people are all for it and they're gung-ho, for the worst criminals.
You know me. I am anti-death penalty.
Right?
100%.
Right. And so, and listen, the one thing about you on that is that you're consistent, right? Like, you're a pro-life guy, which a lot of people probably don't know.
Right.
But you're a pro-life all the way through.
Anti-war, anti-abortion. I don't want to make abortion illegal, but I wish we would work hard to prevent unnecessary abortions.
If we can just go through adoptions and get better health care for women so that it's less risky for all those pregnancies.
Sort of things. Yes. And I'm also, again...
not to get into your abortion, but you're consistent with that thought of a life is a life, and we should not be taking life as morals.
In the case of the death penalty, as retribution, right? Because typically...
I'm just saying, like, the idea is consistent there. Now, what's funny is the supporters of Trump and the administration and the MAGA crowd are just like you, very, very pro-life when it comes to babies, but they are way pro-death penalty, right? Like, especially like the gun system. Wow, the NRA people that are usually pro-life, like, they're all about just kill them, string them up, zap them, juice them, fry them, whatever you got to do. And the death penalty has always been complicated for me because I'm a vengeful, angry person. So I kind of...
Well, you do know my hypocrisy, though. I'm also pro-vigilante. So if someone killed my niece or nephew, I would put a bullet in his head in a second. And I would want to go in front of a jury and go, yeah, I was crazy then. I'm okay now.
Right.
We cool? I would literally want to high-five the jury.
The Samuel Jackson thing. In A Time to Kill. But I just...
Damn right, they deserve to die. I hope they burn in hell. You're welcome for not trying to go full Samuel Jackson.
So on my end, and especially when you look at the people, the first 5 cases, the crimes were brutal.
Oh my God, I looked at them too.
I mean, most
and
of
they
them,
were, by the way, 3 or 4 of them were white.
Three.
What was it, 4?
No, it was 4 of them were white. Well, the one guy I'm not sure. That's okay. Why. But they. I'm
just saying, from a racial perspective, it's not there.
A majority were white in this particular instance. Of the first 5 that they cleared, and the crimes were heinous, and they all involved children.
Yes. Oh God! You read the cases they were convicted of,
and I won't even bring it up. What was going on? But and so I read that, and I was like, I'm okay with these guys going. Like, I kind of am on the fence with it, but I'm really okay with all 5 of these guys cooking.
I struggle with this so hard, Steve, because...
And they won't cook. I mean, it's drugs, and it's 1 drug instead of the 3 drug injection. That's more your world than mine.
Yeah, it is. I've worked for companies that made those drugs. as a consultant. But I mean, you and I have talked about this on air and off. There's certain people I just don't shed a tear for.
Right.
And while my position stays consistent, I am anti-death penalty. When it's people who are convicted of these things, especially when the evidence is rock solid, I stand by my conviction. I don't like that. Having said it, am I going to...
Are you going to go chain yourself to a tree?
No,
you'll be all right.
No, there's people that I will not
You'll be all right.
do that for. But it's ugly, and it's different because...
But I think this is... I'll just say the timing on this... during the entire... There's no good time for this with the Trump administration because race is so directly tied to his administration, right? He agitates intentionally to kind of stroke the ego of the race monster, if you will.
Sure.
Right? And then you take into what we know the Russians did in terms of flooding all sorts of racial sort of animus through social media. Just the idea to do something like this, it's just so tone deaf. Right? Like, why now? Like, you just needed to do it, like, randomly on a Tuesday in the middle of fucking July.
Is it tone deaf, or is it...
Well, it's...
political?
Or, I mean, I think it's right on with their base, right? Like, I mean, their base is going to look at this now. I think it's getting lost in there somewhere. But we also know that Trump is a huge supporter of the death penalty. I mean, he's talked about...
He wanted Central Park 5.
I mean,
he wanted to bring that back to New York.
Right. I mean, starting with the Central Park 5, but, I mean, he's talked about Duterte, who, you know, is the leader down in the Philippines, whose police are allowed to just freely kill drug dealers, right? Like, anyone that they find dealing and trafficking drugs, the police have, like, went on a murdering spree, killing, like, 100 people. And Trump was just like, that's cool. That's something I could get down with.
Right.
And it's dangerous, right? I mean, it just, like, the idea, because he says things like this, and we have that very small... tiny section of society who they hear things, they snap, and then they go and do something crazy, and they think they do it in the name of Trump. And in the left, whether it's AOC or is crazy, they get with their rhetoric as well. You know, you had a person that went in and tried to blow up, I believe, an ICE detention center. Some guy who claimed to be Antifa. You know, he put out what are those things? A manifesto. Quoted a lot of quotes to AOC and you know, some things that a lot of different progressives have said on the left, and you know, he was murdered without hurting anyone, but he was
murdered. I don't know.
Well, he was killed. He was killed by
security
ICE security people. But I mean, like, so you get like it's not just the people on the right who do it. I mean, we've got this insane asshole who did the same thing. That we're worried about here, but it just the idea, like, knowing all this that's going on, and I feel like there's just so much else going on in the news that you could look at it two ways. One, they did it intentionally right now, knowing that they wanted to do it, but there's so much going on that it would just kind of get washed away in the
ether, right? Sure.
Right. Because it's just like, oh, well, no one's going to notice that we just fired up the death penalty again. Cool. So we'll just do it now. Right? Or they did it thinking that it would shift talk away from the Mueller report, and they just kind of misread it. But either way, it's out there, and they're thrilled with the idea that they got it in without a lot of pushback.
I mean, definitely it skated through. I made it pretty clear that I'm anti-death penalty, and I don't think
I haven't been clear on where I stand on it because I don't have a good, clear position. I mean, you know, for extreme cases, I'm all about it. Others, I'm not, and I've grown over the years more sensitive to that because we've just seen enough people from the last 30 years exonerated now after DNA evidence or a witness comes forward that finally got the courage to do so. And then we're seeing people, I mean, probably, and it doesn't seem like a lot with the number of people that you have in there, but if you can save 6 people or 10 people a year, I mean, who knows how many else are actually in there. So that's what's scary about it. I mean, because you start killing people off, and then you come to find out, like, oh wait, that person, like, there's no coming back from that.
You give them a really the Naked Gun. This is a Harrison the Moretti case. He was innocent. He went to the chair 2 months ago. What's the point?
Right, but I mean, if you give a person a life sentence, then if you do find something that exonerates them later down the line, truly exonerates them, right?
Right. That's such a complicated thing too.
Then there's still
appeal system, whatever. But
then at least they're still alive, where you can get them out.
Right.
And yeah, you may have to pay this person X amount of dollars, but at least you have a person who didn't die in prison that wasn't supposed to.
And I mean, I hate talking about people who aren't talking to us, but Mike Wood and I once had a conversation, and he did a video of our conversation, and he showed a humane execution, and it was a dude strapped to a table, just like hyperventilating as they were sticking the needle in his arm. And it was a powerful, brutal thing to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of our collaborations before he told me I was a scumbag. And I was just...
Strong words.
Yeah, well, he kind of said that. That was about me, so I can say it. But the video was brutal to watch.
I remember,
a human being strapped to a table, getting needles stuck in his arms. Like, wow, this isn't that whole, here you go to sleep, bye-bye, baby. It's fucking horrible.
Right. I mean, and you have to be terrified. I mean, some of the, like...
How can you not be?
Right. Well, some people, come to, a level of acceptance and are able to do it calm and this,
right.
But others are not.
It's still pretty gross. Now, of people that you wouldn't mind seeing get executed, there are just people who've done disgusting things.
Child molesting, rapists, murderers.
Funny you should bring that up.
Speaking of which...
Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. So they found him beat up in his cell.
Which we predicted on this show.
Like the week before, like last week.
Like, it's not going to be shocking if he ends up...
Right, and immediately, obviously, your conservatives on the right are saying, oh, it's a botched Clinton hit job, and, of course, Hillary Clinton, she can't figure out an election, she can't figure out how to kill people, and it's like,
I haven't heard anyone say that.
Yeah, no,
awesome.
I saw it on Twitter, and I just scrolled through it, but it's just like, okay, so, wait a minute. You're agreeing with the narrative that the Clintons... Like, they have this long list, this body list of people that they've had murdered, but then you're coming back and saying she's completely incompetent and can't figure out an election, can't figure out a murder, but you're just piling on
She's Kaiser Soze until she fucks up, and then she's a moron, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I think...
Having said that, all right, so we said the other day we would not be shocked if he ends up dying in prison under, whether it's...
Suspicious or completely unsuspicious. Like, he killed himself.
Right. I mean, when Ariel Castro, if you don't know that story, Google it. When he hanged himself in prison, I went, okay,
dude was like,
he may have had some help.
First of all, the dude was like 5'6", right? Like, he was short. He was
Ariel Castro?
He was a tiny fucking pudgy piece of shit. But he hung himself like from a belt through it's like, why did he have a belt, and how the fuck did he hang himself from the window in a jail cell, like with the... It was just
suspicious.
Was like,
and you know what, suspicious and unsympathetic.
And so no one asked, like, I think we're asking the most questions that have been asked about Ariel Castro's death since his death. And
as much as I'm anti-death penalty, you don't see me shedding a tear right now. Ariel Castro was one of the most disgusting human beings ever to walk the planet. There's little doubt of that. And Jeffrey Epstein could compete. I don't know if he's a silver medalist or gold medalist, but he's
on the podium. He's on the podium.
He's on the podium, exactly. I was about to use that line. Yeah, fuck. I mean, and so, but the fact that it was so I've heard a few people say that, well, they think this is a fake for him to try to get transferred to a lower security prison. And when you're as big a scumbag as Jeff, I won't rule that out. Did you enjoy the whiskey again? Huh? It's fucking great whiskey, by the way.
I think there's no chance in hell he gets transferred out. And that was a really bad move if that was his motivation. I think one or two things happened. Three things. Either he tried to take himself out because he realizes... and maybe for any reason, either he realizes
there's no way out of this, he's going
there's
to prison
no way out,
life,
or he feels that at least taking himself out is better than whatever
is waiting for him. Sure,
I mean, with some of the names that have been implicated, I mean, the Saudi royal family, the Clintons, the royal family over in the UK. Yep. I mean, there's been a lot of big names, affiliated with this guy. And if we know what we think he knows about some of the people's deep, dark, dirty secrets, then, I mean, he may legit think, like, listen, it's probably better if I just kill myself because whatever these people are going to do to me is going to be way worse, right? Like,
that's not
that's
not an unreasonable thought. I agree.
Or somebody got in, an angry prisoner got in, got after him, and didn't have time to finish the job.
People who molest children in prison typically have a real bad go of things, and again, call me hypocrite all you want.
Know.
I don't.
First of all, I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I
almost hope it's true.
I would hope it's true, and I think that there's a little bit of myth to that. I mean, just I spent a lot of time in county lockup, not personally, but just a lot of times I had to talk to and interview clients. You were literally underground at 26 in California,
Chicago Public Defender's Office. You've been there. You've done your thing,
right? So I just people are just like everybody kind of keeps to themselves. Yes, you do have gangs and you have factions, and you have people getting beat all the time, but just because they're a child molester, I don't think it really stands out as much as we would like it to.
It's more mythological,
I think it is to a degree. I mean,
well, you've spent more time in lockup than I have.
That's true. More ways than one, literally.
I wasn't going to go there. I was going to throw it out there and let you.
It happens. Anyway,
being a nerd has its advantages, to be honest with you. All right,
I was a nerd.
I'm a better nerd than you.
Fair.
All right, so fuck Jeffrey Epstein.
Somebody's gonna.
Yeah, and again, I acknowledge the hypocrisy in my words, but fuck them. All right, so
somebody's gonna.
So you sent me a story.
But fuck them.
Well, actually, before we get into a story you sent me, Ruth Bader Ginsburg came out, and RBG, who, look, I don't know anyone who gets a rod about talking about the Supreme Court more than you. You love.
I'm sure that there's plenty of people who probably get paid to do it who get.
I doubt they get as excited about this as you.
Listen,
anyway,
Ruth Bader
Ginsburg.
So when Neil Gorsuch was put out there as a candidate for the Supreme Court, a lot of people kind of lost their shit over it. And if you remember, I said I didn't think it was the move that people thought it was, like the death knell in Roe versus Wade, and they were going to just go everything super conservative. Like, that's not Neil Gorsuch's thing. He's a little bit weird about not weird. I don't like his stance on corporations being considered as people.
All right.
And that's bothersome to me because I feel that it really leads to, on
a fundamental level, you think
right.
It means,
it leads to really bad things downstream. But other than that, when you look at a lot of his decisions, they are fair, they're balanced, they're reasoned from a reasonable standpoint that follows the letter of the law, the rule and the spirit of the law, and he does that consistently, other than with some of the corporate things. And so I was okay with him being there because I don't think he's a guy that's really big on precedent, right? What's considered established law, which the law that's put out by the Supreme Court is the established law, and from the early returns on his first session as a Supreme Court justice, I think he's kind of proved me right. Right, I mean, he's been kind of conservative, or he's been more, open and liberal on some things where people really thought that, this is where, the Trump administration was going to kind of, make their chops, is that they had a person that they put in the Supreme Court, and that person was going to vote their way, and then he doesn't, right? And so, people are immediately going to, the conservatives who support Trump are saying, oh, we were let down by your Supreme, you were let down because you thought that this person was political, and he's not. He's legal, and he made a commitment and took an oath to protecting the Constitution, doing what he feels is right based off of legal precedent and standards that have been already set. And that's where people are getting disappointed with Gorsuch. But I think for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to come out and give these guys those sort of compliments, and she also said similar things about Kavanaugh as well, who once you got past the whole thing with.
And we
fought
pretty bitterly about whole thing.
And you and again bringing up Mike Wood, he blasted me on it and said it was a cuck move. What I wanted to do, what I thought Kavanaugh should have done. Again, I'm looking at this just from a PR optics standpoint. You guys are in the,
I just felt like you can't bring up something that may or may not have happened 30 years ago.
But they already did it. And so you got to deal. You got to deal with it. They did it, whether you feel that they can do it or not. They did it. So my whole point was get through this with the least amount of fire and brimstone, and just say. I mean, he had a perfect out that it was fucking 30 fucking years ago. They drank a lot. He didn't remember. If it did happen, I'm really sorry. That was out of character for me.
The Arnold move of where there's smoke, there's fire, but I can't admit. All right.
Yeah.
But back to Gorsuch. Because
and think about it. That blew over for Arnold.
It did. I mean, it was it was a different time, but yes, it did blow over.
Well, I mean, it blew through, but I mean, things have come back on people. Me Too, hashtag Me Too. People, I mean, women are digging, right? Looking for things. I mean, like people, I mean, think about it. Your boy, Al Franken. I mean, he had the thing with the girl in the USO. I mean, he wasn't even in the Senate when the shit happened. Like, so he wasn't.
He wasn't?
He wasn't.
Okay.
And so I think that's how he could have handled
Just
that.
because I have 2 books of his on my shelf doesn't mean he's my boy. But
right.
he is.
But
he
with Kavanaugh, I think had he gone the route that I said, just apologize, say you don't remember. Yes, you drank a lot. It was irresponsible. It was high school. And if it happened, you're really sorry. You apologize to her family. You do that whole thing. The whole thing blows over. You move on. You're going to get appointed. Either way, he was going to get appointed, right?
Right.
Unless he came out and was just like, yeah, I raped you. What about it, right? Like, as long as he didn't do that, then he knew that he was going to get confirmed and he was going to make it in, right? So instead of doing the whole thing where he's slamming the table talking about he likes beer... Right?
I will not argue that he could have handled it better.
Right?
I will not argue that for a second.
But he's also turned out to be fair and just and
true.
Use the law in the right way.
And you brought up Gorsuch, and Al Franken brought up a story about a truck driver, and I won't get the details right, but Gorsuch literally said, I interpreted the law. If you don't like the law, write a better law.
Yeah.
And that's what a justice should do.
The exact response.
All right.
Right, and that's good.
Completely agree. All right, so...
Can we go to the lighter side of things?
Yes, we can. For 2 reasons. One, I want to talk about... All right, so another story... None of it means you doing karaoke.
It's not even karaoke. That's just a humming elevator music.
Okay. Which might be worse. All right, so you sent me a story that I cannot wait to talk about. Because Danielle Stella... Can't you hear me yella? You're putting me through hella. That's from The Simpsons. So this is a woman who is going to apparently challenge Ilhan Omar for her seat in Congress.
Yeah.
And she can steal this seat in Congress, maybe literally.
Okay, so let's talk about Danielle Stella. Listen, so this chick, she wants to challenge Ilhan Omar in Minnesota. She's a huge MAGA supporter, Trump, GOP, love it. Okay, great. Her issue when she runs, though, is that she's got a little bit of a record, mostly dabbling in shoplifting and felonious theft. She got busted stealing like $2,000 worth of stuff from like a department store, but she also got busted stealing like $40 worth of stuff from like Walgreens.
Target. It was Target, which is hilarious.
No.
Oh, the 2000 was Target?
No. She got busted at a department store like $2,000, Target for $40, Walgreens for $40, another store for like $200.
Okay, I have a huge problem with this because stealing small amounts is stupid. Go big or go home.
Like, I mean, she did go big, and then she like went back and
then she went just allegedly.
Nah, bro.
Allegedly.
Nah, bro.
No, you know me. I'm always.
She also got hit for not showing up to court, so she got arrested on a warrant for that. And she's got herself a little DUI action. She had a really traumatic event that happened, a few years ago. So they use Danielle Stella is actually not her real name. They used a fake name because she had something really bad happen. I think a bad ex-boyfriend, to be serious.
All right.
So, but she says, so in the story, she says that she walks into Target and blacks out and doesn't remember anything until after she leaves. She said this happens all the time when she shops, which I feel like most of the women who shop at Target, that's what happens
That's
to.
Fair.
Right? Because like you just...
Yeah, and OJ blacks out sometimes too, by the way.
But I mean, how many women do you know walk into Target? They say they're going in for a stick of gum, and they walk out with $150 worth of shit.
Sure.
So she's saying that this actually is exactly what happens, except for all these other women paid for it, and she just walks out, right? Like she just said, "Not fuck it." Like, and she's really bad at it because she gets caught every time.
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
she might steal a whole bunch of shit we don't know about.
Well, true. She's just been caught multiple times.
In the picture in the story you sent me,
she does not look good.
She did look.
She's second worst mugshot we got.
What's the worst?
Port St. Richie.
The
former mayor
who was doing
meth and crack.
Yeah. Okay, that was a bad
and stitching
mugshot.
People up.
That was a very okay. You win. I'm not going to say she's second, but that guy is definitely first. Oh God, I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but if you're going to try to take out the upstart freshman congresswoman, don't be stealing shit from
right. Like you can't have a record, like you can't have a rap sheet,
right?
Like all right, so you got a DUI back in 2015. Okay,
hey, it happens.
All right, it happens. You got busted for shoplifting when you were 18. Okay, it happens. Right? You can't have a felony.
2 weeks ago,
right? Like a felony and multiple misdemeanors and a DUI. I guess they tried to plead down, and it was so bad they couldn't plead it down.
Wow.
Which, if you know anything about DUI law, like almost everybody's first is usually like a record shop or something.
You're right. You go to the
this one was so bad that they couldn't even walk it down. And she's got she's been charged multiple times with either felonious theft or shoplifting, and she also got busted because she skipped court. Right? But this bitch wants to run for Congress.
This bitch is offensive, Steve. You need to be
She's offensive.
She's offensive. She's an offender.
You want to talk about entitled white women to have the audacity to run for a fucking public seat with that rap sheet?
I know how to prevent theft because I do it all the time.
Right.
All right.
Like that.
Now this is.
I just feel like she would steal everything in the State House.
This
Like,
is a great story.
Some shit.
Yeah. This is Donald Trump at the White House.
Hey, honey, look, I got us a bald eagle.
Half the Lincoln bedroom is gone. All right. Let's.
Can we switch to sports?
We can finally because I want to talk about 3 things that are important to us. All right, so the NFL. You're a Steelers fan. Yeah, it was. You're a Steelers fan. I'm a Bills fan. We both live in Cleveland.
And we play. Steelers and Bills play this year.
They do.
December 15th.
December 15th?
15th week of the season. So we will have to have... Are we going to wager?
Let's wait till things play out a little bit.
I don't know how I feel about that. I think that you
want me to put my money where my mouth is now?
Well, I think we could do this. We can maybe wager with some sort of weighted, like, plus minus.
All right.
Which I don't think is necessarily fair because the NBA could flip, or the NFL
would be even worse. I don't know either.
But things could flip. I mean, who knows? Somebody could get injured, and all of a sudden, the Steelers are, without Ben Roethlisberger and no Juju and, James Conner and none of that. And so, I mean, all of a sudden, then it becomes, very interesting. So
I'm going to be honest. I'm probably unrealistically optimistic about the Bills this year.
Good.
So this could make money.
You know what? I think actually. So here's the problem. Not the problem, but what I've noticed is whatever is going through you right now. I think it's in the water because the Browns and the Browns fans, it's insane right now.
I agree with you on that.
Someone called up one of the sports talk radio shows and said 14-2, lose in a close game in the AFC Championship. and I was looking at my radio and I almost drove off the road. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like 2 years ago you were 0-16. And last year, you won 7 games.
Lost 8 and tied 1.
Right, lost 8, tied 1.
Against the Steelers, by the way.
Fine. But the idea that, like, all right, well, we got everything we need. Now, listen, the Browns have done some really good things in the football department, in the personnel department they added Odell Beckham Jr., which if you follow sports even a little bit, the Giants traded him for, I don't know, a bag of balls.
No,
they got a first round
pick, and they got fucking the dude.
Yes, Jabril Peppers.
Thank you.
But they make that trade, and then so now you've matched Odell Beckham Jr. with a really good friend of his in Jarvis Landry. The guys played together at LSU. They've known each other forever. They're the best of friends, so there's a thought that the chemistry between those two will be really good. And then Baker Mayfield is ecstatic because now all of a sudden he's got a big primetime target.
Right.
And he's got Jarvis Landry, who's one of the best receivers in the league. I would say probably in the top 25, 30. Last year was a drop-off. But, I mean, he's got a ton of receptions.
And Odell's top 10.
No, Odell's probably top 5. Odell's really good when he's healthy. And the offense is just ridiculous, right? I mean, you also have Nick Chubb, who is probably on his way to being an all-pro running back, if not really damn close. They have Kareem Hunt, who will likely be there in Week 8 for them. He's currently suspended. And they got Duke Johnson, who's a threat out of the backfield, and just a really good ball player who has really great hands. And so
they've got weapons.
They've got
Baker
weapons,
Mayfield,
right? They've got David
quarterback.
Njoku at tight end, who's just this freaky athletic guy who just needs to be more consistent in his catching the ball, right? Because when he catches the ball, he does amazing things, but he's really inconsistent.
I'll never forget when he was on Hard Knocks last year, and he was dropping balls all over the place in practice, and one of the defensive players told him you couldn't catch a cold in Alaska if you were butt naked.
Yeah,
I thought was hilarious. But then he went on to a preseason game and caught 2 touchdowns in a preseason game.
Right.
The dude can play.
He can play, but when he's
on, he's something else.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely shown flashes. He's big, fast, athletic. You see him on the practice field, and he's just chiseled up. And he's an athlete, and so I mean that's something to behold. That's something to concern you as a defense. They got Hollywood Higgins. They've got the kid out of Florida who everybody was so worried about getting in trouble.
Character issue, yeah.
Right, and he's been he had an incident where he got pulled over with a crumb of weed in his car, for making a bad turn out of a gas station. And we haven't heard a peep out of him since, and he's poised to have everyone says he looks good in camp, and he's poised to have a really strong season. I thought he made some really big plays last year. I'm annoyed I can't think of his name. And I know we have Browns fans who listen to the show who are losing their shit right now.
I'm sure they are. And
screaming
sorry, neither of us have an
his
iPhone
name is X.
Right.
God damn it! I want to say Corey Coleman, but he actually
Corey Coleman's got traded to Buffalo.
Well, he got traded to Buffalo, and then he got released, and
Right.
now he's with the Giants. And I think he just blew out his ACL.
All right. Anyway, they have
the Browns have
their
lot
offensive
of
weapons are there. Having said that,
Myles Garrett on defense.
Myles Garrett's a monster.
Ward,
having said that,
a Buckeye.
Having said that, the people here who are putting them at 14-2, slow your roll.
I mean,
I want the Browns to be good.
Yes,
I want them to beat the
great.
Bills.
I mean, listen, I say this. People say you're a Steelers fan. There's no way you cheer for the Browns. I said, bullshit. One, my best friend worked for the Browns for a long period of time. He no longer does. And because he worked for them, I always said, I hope the Browns go 14-2 every season.
With the 2 losses beating the Steelers, right?
2 losses beating the Pittsburgh, and we beat them in the playoffs. But living in a city where you've got professional sports teams, when the teams are good, the vibe in the city is better. Going out in the city is more fun. There's an energy that comes with it, and it's amazing. When the Cavs won the championship,
one of the most
this
amazing things
city
ever
was
been.
amazing.
Yes,
Listen,
agreed.
even last year when the Browns won 7 games, and when they were able to have victory Sunday nights and victory Mondays, I mean, it was great. You had a lot of hangovers, but it was a fucking good time. And even, I mean, the Indians, the city has seen the Indians be really good. I mean, the World Series was amazing. It sucked that we lost, in Game 7 in extra innings, but those sort of experiences,
the energy was amazing.
Right, those sort of experiences, like they stay with you for a fucking lifetime. And so I have no issue with the Browns being good. I'm hoping for it, but the other part of me is just like, you gotta fucking chill.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and then the other part of it...
14-2 is what, the Patriots strive to reach.
Right. I mean, it's
won
fucking
6
crazy.
Super Bowls.
And, so everyone's talking shit to me because I'm a Steeler fan, right? I mean, 2 hours away. And, everyone's... I mean, and what's amazing are the people just like, well, the Steelers are going to suck. You lost Antonio Brown. You lost Le'Veon Bell. Ben is old. Your defense sucks. And you don't have a running back, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, one, Ben Roethlisberger led the league in passing last year. 2, we still have Juju Smith-Schuster, who was an all-pro receiver last year. James Conner was a Pro Bowler last year. And we have a number of younger guys who need to prove themselves. But I think we'll probably be okay.
So from a football fundamental standpoint, running backs depend 100% on their offensive line.
Yep.
So I'm a Bills fan. LaShawn McCoy had an awful year last year. Josh Allen, a rookie quarterback, outrushed LaShawn McCoy last year.
Yep.
Having said that, our offensive line was
garbage.
Probably the worst in the league.
And the Steelers had one of the best offensive lines in the league.
And they continue to have that, and
Right.
that's why
now
Ben
we
and
did
those
lose.
guys...
Now the Steelers did lose Mike Munchak, who's the offensive line coach, who is a guru.
That matters.
He's been really good, but those guys probably aren't going to forget what he taught them. And they actually promoted a guy from within to coach the offensive line, so I don't have a ton of concerns about the offensive line right now. We'll see if that bears out to be true. But as a Steeler fan, I am excited about this because as good as Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell were, we didn't see a Super Bowl with them. We didn't win one. We didn't see one. We went to
those guys can ball.
Yes. I'm not arguing it, but I mean, and listen, when we lost to the Jaguars in the playoffs that year, it wasn't because of the offense. We scored 42 fucking points. It's just that our defense was so fucking bad. We gave up, 48 points to the fucking Jaguars, led by Blake Bortles.
And by the way, the Jaguars
should be working at fucking McDonald's right now, but somehow has a job out in
got a
Oakland.
job at Target, by the way.
No, he's in Oakland.
I know.
Or Seattle. Or I don't give a fuck.
Here's the funny thing. The week before, the Jaguars beat the Bills in a 10-3 game.
Right. And
when Blake Bortles couldn't have... I mean, he was awful. And if...
it was,
I watched that game with you. I'll never forget watching that game with you and watching you melt down over the Steelers' defense being pathetic.
But what was crazy about it...
I'm not criticizing.
Listen, their defense was awful, but... The Jaguars would go out and grind out a 8, 9, 10 play drive, right? Blake Bortles just throwing dump passes because our linebackers were too slow to cover the running backs. An occasional third down pass on some fake play action, dokie, whatever. And then the Steelers would come out, 3 plays, score. Bing, bang, boom. They get the points right back. I mean,
You're not wrong against
the offense. And we don't have Antonio Brown, and that will hurt. And I'll miss him as crazy as he fucking is.
He's a great ball
kick
player.
a ball, and him with Ben Roethlisberger is an amazing connection. It will be interesting because he's never played well with any of the replacements for Ben, right? Whether it was Michael Vick or Landry Jones or whoever. Like he's always had trouble when Ben wasn't in the game. So it'll be interesting to see because. Derek Carr is not Ben Roethlisberger.
Fair.
Right? I mean, and Ben Roethlisberger won Super Bowls and threw for a shit ton of yards without Antonio Brown, before Antonio Brown. Right? He had Santonio Holmes, and that worked out fine. And Santonio Holmes wasn't the player that AB is.
All right, I want to do something where we should wrap up soon.
Yes.
I want to do something. I want to give you a chance to predict the Bills season, me a chance to predict the Steelers season, and then we'll both predict the Browns season. You ready for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you want me to go first?
You go first.
All right, I think the Steelers are going to be a 9-7, 10-6 kind of team. I think.
No, you gotta pick one. All right,
fine. The Steelers will be a 10-6 kind of team. They will challenge for the division record. They're going to have some struggles. Their defense is not great, but they do have one of a clear Hall of Fame quarterback. Juju Smith-Schuster is a stud. Their offensive line is fantastic. And so I think in a division where the Bengals are basically 2 guaranteed wins, I think the Ravens are going to struggle. I think based on their division and their opponents, they'll be a 10-6 team, and a playoff team, potentially a division winner, but maybe a wild card team.
Okay. I have the Bills going 6-10.
Okay, wow, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth.
Sorry,
that's fine. I mean,
I just don't know if you got better where you needed to get better in terms of the offensive line. LaShawn McCoy is a year older, and I think his best days may be behind him. But with a good offensive line, I can easily be proven wrong. But
they did overturn their offensive line, so it's definitely a thing.
It's overturned, but I just don't know if it's better.
Well, right? It'll be better. It just might not be good. It was so bad last year.
And I think that will also lead to having to rely heavily on Josh Allen, who's still young, who is very similar to Cam Newton, and I think Josh Allen doesn't have what Cam Newton had in terms of support, in terms of a quality offensive line, running game, and a dependable, reliable receiver, and so unfortunately, it doesn't play out well for the Bills.
Okay.
There's some questions still about the Bills' defense. So can you stop the run this year? I don't know. And can you stop long passes? Because you guys were just victimized by, 20, 30-plus yard passes all season long. And I don't know if you got better in that regard either.
You hung out at the Bills bar enough to see that. I'm more optimistic than that, but I'm also a Bills fan, and optimism is what comes with us. What do you have for the Browns?
For the Browns, I have the Browns going 9-7. I feel that the switch to Freddie Kitchens, the addition of Odell Beckham Jr., Kareem Hunt, I think pushes them 2 games better than they were last year. I think they'll probably get off to a slow start. I think that the Tennessee game is going to be a huge sort of wake-up call to Browns Nation and to the Browns, in that I think they'll probably lose the game, and it'll kind of be like that'll be their first sort of come-to-Jesus moment. They may win the second. I think their issue is going to be that first 4 games. I think they're going to lose more games, maybe 2. If they split it, great, but I think I could see them potentially losing 3 out of the first 4 games, and that kind of putting them in a tough spot, and then them having to figure it out. But they will ultimately, and then once Kareem Hunt gets back, and then he's going to need a week or 2 to really get into game shape, he probably gives them a boost towards the end that puts them at that 8-9 win mark. But I have them going 9-7, and being right in the mix, kind of, sort of needing help to get in, but not getting in the playoffs. Which then we'll see how everybody reacts then.
I have the Browns going 10-6. I think they're a good team. I think Baker's a baller, and he does have new weapons. But I also have the asterisk there.
The defense isn't good.
Their defense isn't great. Their defensive coordinator is new.
I think their defense got worse, by the way.
Their head coach is a first-year head coach. And I think it's one of those things where they could be phenomenal. They could be a 10-6, 11-5 team. But I also think if they do what you just described and lose 2 out of the first 4, or worse yet, 3 out of the first 4, the wheels could come off, and they could be.
I don't think the wheels are going to come off because there's just so much talent, and I don't think there's anyone in there that's as destructive as ESPN and the Max Kellermans and Stephen A. Smiths are going to make it out to be. I think what will happen is they may come out to a slow start, 1-3, 2 whatever, 2-2, 2-3. And then they'll start to put some shit together, right? Like, I mean, we've seen
first-year head coach, new defensive coordinator. I'm curious.
We've seen 10 games or 12 games from Baker, something like that. NFL defenses and their defensive coordinators are pretty smart people. Baker's young. He's played more than a lot of quarterbacks because he played for so many years at Oklahoma, but there's going to be an adjustment for him, right? Like, I mean, he came in on fire as a rookie, and then he had to take his lumps, and I think that teams are good. Like, listen, Tennessee's going to have all summer to prepare for him, right? Like, so it makes sense that they would make him, kind of pay for it early on, and then there'll be the adjustment. They're going to have to figure out game speed between him and Odell Beckham, and how spacing works with all the receivers, and how to figure out the running game and everything else.
All right, so we don't have to do this tonight, but we've opened the door. So we need to come up with a Bills-Steelers bet, not necessarily a head-to-head bet, which you can also do, but that'll be week 15, so we can definitely win on that. But a Bills record versus Steelers record with plus or minus, we need to come up with something of that, and it needs to involve a bottle of whiskey for the show to be shared, because we've had some debates there. But
what'd you say for the Browns?
10-6. I said the Bills would be
10-6.
All right, and I said the Steelers.
Wait. No. You said Jim Brown's 10-6, and then what'd you say for the
Steelers? I think I said 10-6 also.
Yeah, you did. What'd you say for the Bills?
I didn't say, because I didn't ask. You didn't ask me about the Bills. I didn't ask you about the Steelers.
Well, what are they going to be?
I think the Bills will be about a 9-7 team.
Okay.
And you think the Steelers will be at what?
I would say 11-5.
All right. All right, so those are now being written down on these scrap piece of paper in our.
That's a notebook. That's not scrap.
It's not. It is. It's official. It's in the notebook. All right, brother, you ready to shut this down?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for listening to us. We're at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. We are Jim at whiskeycongress.com, Steve at whiskeycongress.com for emails.
And I'm going to write an article next week.
Okay.
And I'm going to get our website back going. Our website's still there.
It is.
We just haven't put anything new on it in a while. But I'm going to switch that out. I'm going to be doing less ghostwriting for other entities, and I'm going to go back to writing for us.
Sounds good.
Probably should have never done that, but whatever. Right. I was getting paid for the other stuff.
Fair. All right. Thanks for listening. We are out.